Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear children. Now I'm here again with the next module under genetics. We are starting off with the laws of inheritance. Before that, as an introduction, let us learn what do you mean by the branch of biology called genetics and what are we actually going to study under that. Mendel's name cannot be forgotten. He is the father of genetics. So I'll start off this module with an introduction about Mendel, his experiments, the pea plants on which he experimented, and some basic terms which will be needed in this study. So, genetics is a branch of biology that deals with the study of inheritance of characters in organism. It includes the study of the genetic makeup of different species also, the genes in it. And it also includes the laws governing the transmission of characters from parents to offspring, from generations to generations. As I said, the father of this branch of biology, that is genetics, is Gregor John Mendel. He was an Austrian monk who primarily worked on pea plants. Mendel succeeded because of certain reasons. Two important reasons are he selected pea plants which had contrasting characters. At the same time, they had a short life cycle. So he could observe many generations. So his observations were much more accurate. Another important reason is that he had studied mathematics and statistics during his university days, but it was a pity that when he was alive, his experiments were never accepted. So, the advantages of pea plant as a research material are many. One of the most important one is pea has got a number of contrasting characters, pairs of characters. Like if you take height, it has got a tall variety and a dwarf variety. It doesn't have an intermediary height. Similarly, if you see seed color, it will be green or pale yellow in color. There are no other color options. So, a pair of contrasting characters help them to choose an hybrid. Then comes another important advantage. Pea plants are bisexual. So, if some plant is bisexual, self fertilization is possible. At the same time, if you want to cross the character, you select two varieties with contrasting characters. The pollen grains are collected from the male flowers and is dusted onto the female flowers so that there is cross fertilization. Before that, emasculation is done in the female flower, that is, the anthers are removed so that there is no self fertilization. Similarly, pea plants got a short life cycle of 3 months so that 4 generations can be bred and observed within a year. So here are some basic concepts needed to understand the inheritance of characters. In class 10 biology, we are limiting ourselves in learning the inheritance of characters in diploid organisms. The concept of diploid and haploid has been already explained in the previous videos by me. I have given you the links. You can go through those if you have not watched them. All advanced organisms are diploid. The huge trees, plants, animals around you, ourselves. That means they all have chromosomes in pairs. As genes are located in the chromosomes, genes also will be in pairs. And this paired chromosome where the paired genes are located are called homologous chromosomes. So, we are going to take all the genes in pairs and we are going to see how those are inherited and how the inheritance of these paired genes lead to the inheritance of characters. So, we start with the understanding that genes are in pairs and characters are controlled by them. So, let us see what is the significance of Mendel's laws. These laws form the basis of the field of genetics. There were 3 laws formulated by him. We will be dealing with them in the next 3 upcoming modules. Before we get into that, if you ask me a question whether every character in a pea plant is controlled only by one pair of genes or every character in any organism is controlled by one pair of genes, if you ask me a question, then it is not always so. There are some characters in pea plants as well as other organisms which are controlled by more than a pair of genes. But there are some characters which are controlled by only a single pair of genes and we are going to learn only those characters. So Mendel has formulated the laws of inheritance on the basis of characters on pea plants, which are basically controlled by one pair of genes, and such an inheritance is called monogenic inheritance. Some basic terms to understand Mendel's laws: character and traits. What do you mean by the word character? A character is any identifiable feature of an organism. For example, if I say height of a plant, flower color, seed shape, fruit shape, all these are identifiable features. So they are called as characters. Now, in organisms, we see that a character sometimes have 2, 3, 4, 5 or more variations. For example, if you take hibiscus flower, it may be found in red color, in pink color, in white color, and so on. So here there are at least 3 variations. But Mendel took only those characters of pea plants which had 2 variations. There was no third variation. So the basic characters he took were: one is height of the plant, where there was a tall and a dwarf variety; flower color, which were purple and white; seed color, which were green and pale yellow; seed shape, which was smooth and wrinkled; pod shape, which was inflated and constricted, and so on. Traits are different variations seen in one particular character in an organism. For example, if I take the character of height, in that character, when we take tall and dwarf, there are 2 traits of that character. Similarly, if I take a character as seed color, then green and pale yellow seeds are the 2 traits of that particular character. But tallness and green seed color cannot be combined together, as they belong to 2 different characters. Similarly, if we take pod shape in pea plants, the character is pod shape and the traits are inflated and constricted. If you take the character of flower color in pea plants, the traits are purple and white. As each character discussed by us will have 2 genes controlling it, these 2 genes of one particular character should be denoted by the same alphabet. Don't forget this golden rule: one character, one particular alphabet. For example, I'll take height as a character in pea plants. It has got 2 traits, tall and dwarf. These 2 variations should be denoted by a same alphabet. It can be A, it can be B, it can be D, it can be X. And as there are 2 variations, one of the variation will be denoted by capital letter and one of the variation will be denoted by a small letter. Now, which variation will take the capital letter and which will take the small letter will be seen in the next slide. I've given an example here. If the tall trait in a pea plant character is height, trait is tall. If I represent it by a capital T, then the dwarf trait of the same character, that is height, will be represented by a small t and not by a d. When Mendel conducted his experiments, he observed that when he crossed 2 traits of the same character, for example, he crossed a tall variation with a dwarf variation of pea plant, the taller variations appeared more in numbers in the next generation and the dwarfer varieties appeared less in number. So he defined the dominant and the recessive trait. How did he define it? When 2 plants with contrasting traits are crossed, the trait which appears more frequently in the progenies, that is the next generation plants, is called the dominant trait, and the trait which appears less frequently in the progenies, they are called as the recessive trait. So here, tall variation is the dominant trait, dwarf variation is the recessive trait. Now, capital letters are generally used to represent the dominant trait, and the smaller letter of the same alphabet is used to represent the recessive trait of the same character. So capital T for tall and small t for dwarf. Although there are no restriction in using any alphabet, instead of T I can use the alphabet X for height also. But we normally tend to use the first alphabet of the dominant trait. For example, in height, tallness is dominant, so we use T for the character height. Similarly, in flower color of pea plants, purple was found to be dominant, so we use the alphabet P for flower color in pea plants. Now you would have got an idea of pea plants as a research material in genetics and an outline of Mendel's work. Now how he arrived at his laws will be dealt with in the next modules. Questions for revision: define the following: genetics, character, traits, diploid cell, haploid cell, dominant trait and recessive trait. Name the following: father of genetics, scientific name of pea plant, character for which the traits are tall and dwarf, inheritance where characters are controlled by a single pair of genes. Now I am giving you a few seconds to write down the definition. I am sure name the following you would have finished by this time. I am giving a few seconds for you to write down the definitions and then cross check it with what is appearing in the screen. The first definition is genetics. It's a branch of biology that is dealing with the study of inheritance of characters. What's a character? It's an identifiable feature of an organism. What are traits? They are different variations observed in any character. A cell with paired chromosomes are called diploid cells and cell with unpaired chromosomes are called haploid cell. 2n and n are used to denote diploid and haploid. When two traits are crossed, the trait which appear more frequently is called a dominant trait and which appears less frequently is called a recessive trait. And name the following: father of genetics is Mendel. Scientific name of pea plant is Pisum sativum. When you write it, you have to underline it, and when you print it, it should be in italics. Character for which the traits are tall and dwarf, that is height. Inheritance where characters are controlled by a pair of genes, monogenic inheritance. Have a nice day. We'll meet you in the next module. Learn well and be safe.